So what is going on, guys? NandoPrince93 here with another video, and I've released 2 videos already regarding the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro, and this is going to be my 5 reasons why you should spend that $300 to $350 price point to get your hands on this Apple Magic Keyboard for your iPad Pro, because it's been an absolute wonder. And even in my last video where I kind of highlighted 5 main reasons why not to get it, at the end of the day, beginning and end of that video, I told you guys I love this freaking accessory. So hopefully after these 3 videos, you'll be able to kind of make a decision, make an educated decision on what you guys want to do. So let's hop right into this video, guys. Let's get it. All right, so let's talk about the very main point, right? The main point why Apple kind of released a keyboard like this is because of all the complaints, guys. When the Slim Folio, we've had the Slim Folio keyboard, we've had some sort of iteration of it since 2015 when they came out with the smart keyboard for the iPad Pro. When the original iPad Pro came out, it was that weird origami folding one mechanism. But overall, it had the same structure and the same typing experience that we got even with the new revamped one for the iPad Pro 3rd generation, where it had those 2 viewing angles, right? But the typing experience was exactly the same. It was mushy. It was like had a fabric kind of texture to it. It wasn't really what typing should be like. It was there mostly because if you did need to kind of handwrite, or if you did need to type something out pretty quickly, but it wasn't really like an essay or some sort of long document, then you were fine. If you had to just shoot out a couple email replies, then the keyboard did its job. And it was nice that it technically was waterproof, because all the fabric covered the entire keyboard, so you never have to worry about spilling coffee or soda or even water or whatever the case may be on your keyboard. But people, like I said, complained about that keyboard to the nth degree, right? It was like $200 for that stupid keyboard, $200 for a keyboard that can't even type, $200 for no key travel. Like, what is this, right? So Apple's answer was this beautiful scissor switch Magic Keyboard that they put on first on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, then they put it on the MacBook Air, and as of today, actually, they put it on the new revamped 13-inch MacBook Pro. And to let you guys know, typing on this keyboard has been an absolute wonder. I've been using it more and more on my daily tasks. Like, usually when I'm taking notes in regards to work, I kind of flip it over and use my pencil, because it used to be better for me to take notes, but now I'm taking notes by typing in my Notes app, right? Because the experience is just that much better. Sure, it's only 1mm key travel, but at the end of the day, like, I'm trying to put this into words for, the everyday person can kind of appreciate what that 1mm key travel really does, right? It just gives you an actual keyboard that feels like a keyboard. Typing experience is, for me, it's nothing I've actually ever experienced, because this keyboard has been awesome. I haven't really played with anything like it before. Like, for instance, I have a ThinkPad, a Lenovo ThinkPad for work, and those keyboards are supposed to be amazing, right? And to its credit, it is a great keyboard for that computer, but this keyboard is just a lot more pleasant to type on. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because the keys are actually thinner, so when you press down on what you actually want to press down, it's accurate and you know what you're pressing to. You don't have to kind of press on the key as hard as you can to make sure that letter comes through. So overall, I love the experience of the keyboard. It's very, very uniform, especially if you have the 12.9-inch version. I have heard that the 11-inch version, it's a little bit crammed, but that's expected because it's a much smaller profile. But when you have the 12.9-inch iPad, you're kind of getting something close to, if not the exact same, as a 13-inch laptop in terms of a keyboard setup. So yes, it doesn't have function keys, but we've never had function keys, and I have not missed these function keys at all, because anything that I would do with a function key row, I can do on the iPad itself, on the trackpad itself. So I'm not missing a function row key whatsoever. So if you guys are, you're not gonna get it with this $350 keyboard for your iPad Pro. And the argument is, for $350, like, yeah, it should include function keys, but there's a reason why it's done like that, because it just wouldn't, ergonomically, it wouldn't work, right? Like, you wouldn't be able to hit those keys without hitting your finger on the actual iPad itself. So again, everything is done for a reason, but the typing experience, and I'll give you guys a sound comparison too. Typing experience is much better from this iPad Pro keyboard, the new Magic Keyboard. All right, so now let's talk about viewing angles, guys. So with the old Smart Folio keyboard, you only got 2 viewing angles, which was, I guess, a little bit of a step up to the previous one, because instead of 1 viewing angle, you got 2 with the 2nd generation Smart Folio keyboard for the iPad Pro. But this is a whole new ballgame, guys. So one of the biggest gripes that I had, it might be a personal one, maybe you guys don't have this use case, but when I was kind of laying in bed, especially if I was on a trip or something and I wasn't at my own house with my own TV and things like that, I used to put the iPad or a laptop on my chest to watch YouTube and Netflix and things like that. But with the Smart Folio keyboard, you couldn't really do that. Well, not that you couldn't really do it, you couldn't do it at all, because the viewing angle is only upwards, right? Every single time you put it in one of those two viewing angles, it was up. So I would have to like physically tilt it or hold it in tablet mode, and it would sometimes fall on my face when I was like dozing off to sleep. So being able to have that 0 to 135 degree viewing angle is really, really nice. I mean, maybe it's a little bit misleading because you don't, I think the actual first angle you get was probably about around 45 degrees, because that's where the magnets kind of kick in and hold it in place. But still, great viewing angle for that situation where you kind of lay it on your chest and you're able to view all the content that you're viewing. And then it goes all the way back to 135 degrees, which again is really, really nice. Is it as much as a normal laptop? Not quite. Probably laptops get an extra 10 degrees, and obviously if you have one of those 2-in-1s, you can't even compare. But 125 degree viewing angle has been plenty for me, and I absolutely love it. I'm gonna give you guys a side-by-side comparison also of what it looks like in terms of viewing angles on the regular Slim Folio Smart Keyboard case. But it's not just how far you can go, it's now that you can, at every single degree, you have an option, right? So you technically have unlimited viewing angles from that 0 to 135 degree viewing angle, which is nice. You're not just locked into 2 different viewing angles, and then if it doesn't work, then you're kind of SOL, right? So the viewing angles have been huge for me. I love the fact that we can kind of put it to whatever degree we want, and it works pretty well. The only use case where it doesn't really work that well is if, for instance, you're standing at a desk that's sitting height, and you want to put, there's a little party that wants to push the screen a little bit farther back and you can't. But then again, I'm rarely in those situations, if at all. So I don't know if you guys are, but that's the only viewing angle I saw that maybe, you know, they could have gone a little bit further back. But other than that, viewing angles have not been a complaint whatsoever for my day-to-day use. So now let's talk about that trackpad, guys. The trackpad itself, yes, it's small. That was my biggest worry when I ordered the Magic Keyboard, because, you know, with the trackpad that Apple sells solo, it's about 3 or 4 times the size of this trackpad, which I mentioned in my last video. So I was a little bit worried about the trackpad itself, but as of now, it is so responsive. You get used to the size pretty rapidly. You know, I would say there wasn't a moment where I was like, oh, I wish there was more, you know, trackpad screen real estate or more trackpad real estate for me to do what I needed to do. Because for the most part, I'm using the trackpad as an extension of the screen. The trackpad itself, like the gestures work amazingly. It's not your typical spring-loaded trackpad. You can touch it anywhere on the actual trackpad and it works perfectly, which is something that a lot of keyboards or a lot of trackpads don't do, especially even the ones that are built into Microsoft laptops, Windows laptops. And the crazy thing is that it's not done with the same technology as a MacBook Pro. MacBook Pros use haptic touch, so MacBook Pros only have a pane of glass that doesn't move, and it just reacts to how hard you're touching on the trackpad itself. Versus this one, this is a physical trackpad that you have to click down. You can still tap to click. There's an option in the keyboard settings, which I'll show you guys, but which I always turn on. But it is a physical trackpad, which I do like, and the fact that you can click it even on the top portions and it's still responsive, that's amazing. So what I'm most impressed about with this trackpad is the responsiveness, right? And the use cases, like I said, I use it as an extension of the screen. So 3 fingers up to go back to the home screen, 3 fingers up and hold to go to multitasking, 3 fingers side to side to switch between apps. You know, I use it to point and click when I'm editing text and things like that. For the most part, it's done everything that I needed to. It does horizontal scrolling that I needed for LumaFusion and things like that. So I've been happy with it. I have not been upset or annoyed by the small size, and you will get used to it, I guarantee it. And if not, it is also one way that I've been kind of playing with it is using the touchpad itself, again, as a more extension of the screen. And then for a point and click mouse, I still use my Logitech Anywhere S2 mouse. If you guys want to think about it like that, think about the trackpad as an extension of the screen and a very, very good extension of that screen. Because I've seen other trackpads that have tried to mimic the iOS software and what iPadOS wants you to do. And like Bridge Pro Plus has been failing at that. Unfortunately, they were kind of skimped. They didn't know about 13.4 releasing. So they were working with the accessibility version of the mouse support. This is by far the best trackpad that you will find for the iPad Pro, bar none. Unless you get the actual big trackpad that Apple makes themselves, but that's not attached to a keyboard. So that's just something to keep in mind, guys. It is small, but you get used to it. It's an extension of the iPad Pro screen. And then the last 2 things that I kind of want to talk about in terms of justifying the $350 price point is they do add a second USB-C port, right? The second USB-C port, it's nice to have. It only allows for power pass-through, no data, no secondary monitor, you know, no dongles. It's purely for power pass-through, which in theory is nice because you can just plug it in and start working and kind of lay your iPad down when the keyboard is plugged in and you're charging. But there's a couple things that I'm not a fan of. A, it doesn't charge as fast as it would charge the iPad if it's plugged directly into the iPad Pro. It's not a crazy bump down in terms of charging speed, but just to keep that in mind, it's not the same. The fact that I can't use that secondary USB-C port as a dongle is kind of frustrating me, because it doesn't solve my solution of having stuff hanging off the middle of the iPad, right? So because that still looks ugly. So my dream was to just have one cable to plug into that new USB-C port, so it looks like it's out of the way, and then it kind of populates my secondary monitor. It populates or has another USB-A port or another USB-C port for me to plug peripherals and things like that. So that's one thing that I do wish that Apple kind of made, but at the same time, I don't think the smart connector was made with that in mind. So it's probably a limitation of the hardware as opposed to a limitation of what they wanted to do. I'm sure they wanted to provide data transfer through that port, but it probably wasn't possible. So keep that in mind, guys. It's purely for power pass-through, and I think it maxes out at 21 watts versus the iPad Pro. If you plug it directly in, you max out at 30 watts. That's why the charging speeds are a little bit different. And then the very, very last thing, guys, to keep in mind when it comes to the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro is just how freaking cool it looks. None of us have ever seen anything like this before. Microsoft has done things like this to kind of combat that two-in-one marketplace that they thought they owned, which I think Apple has taken over the two-in-one space, especially with this keyboard. But it's just the fact of how cool it looks, guys. You have the iPad that's floating. It's very, very easy to swivel back and forth to get the right viewing angle. Everything just kind of works perfectly. You can close it. It closes nice and softly. The only thing that is kind of annoying is how you open it. But other than that, it locks into place like so. Then you use the hinge on the second hinge on the back to make sure that it's working correctly. And overall, it's just a very, very cool piece of hardware, right? I'm just a big fan of what Apple was able to do. It all works with magnets. You don't need any external connectors. You don't need to worry about making sure that the keyboard is charged, because everything just runs off the iPad's brains and the iPad's battery. It's now a nice little bonus that we have a backlit keyboard. So that's gonna do it for my video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Those are my 5 reasons why you should, take the plunge, buy that $350 iPad Pro keyboard. Ideally, I know this is a first generation product, but I do see myself getting 3-4 years of use out of it. So again, mentally break it down in your head and justify it. $350 over 3 years, over 4 years, anywhere between $90 to $100 a year that you're spending on this, and keep breaking it down to justify, hey, am I gonna get that use case out of it? Is it gonna be worth $10 a month for the next 4 years for me to have this, guys? And that's a call that you guys gotta make, but I do really enjoy it. I plan on keeping this for the long haul, and hopefully it continues to work with other iterations of the iPad. So maybe 2-3 years from now, when the new iPad Pro Gen 5 comes out with the A15 Bionic chip, it still works with this keyboard, and there isn't a different camera module that's gonna make us get a whole new piece of hardware. So fingers crossed on that. Hopefully Apple doesn't kill us with that. But other than that, love the keyboard, guys. Highly recommend it. I'll link it below. Also link my other 2 videos on the Magic Keyboard itself below. That's gonna do it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'm still running the iPhone SE giveaway. So if that video gets to 500 likes, which I'll link below, I'll give the iPhone SE away. If not, I'm gonna return it because I have no use for it, guys. But that's gonna do it for this video. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, peace.